Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Theology Nerd. My name is Aditya, and I'm a self-taught theologian trying to make sense of the world around me. And today you are listening to a new episode. Today's episode will be focused on really addressing the recent events in the news regarding the Anglican Church. Now, if you are part of a lot of the conservative Christian circles that I'm a part of, you would have known that the recent election of the Archbishop of Canterbury has been something that has really taken the world by storm. Um, I think, especially in the Christian world, it's really become a dividing sort of issue inside the Christian world. And as a non Christian as well, I've really been able to just sit at the top and look at this from a neutral perspective. And we'll be looking at that perspective and really trying to understand this issue as holistically as possible. Just a quick disclaimer before getting into today's episode. If I get anything wrong about any of the facts that I mentioned here today, please forgive me. Please correct me in the comments as well. I'll make all the necessary edits in the description. But yes, please tell me. If you guys have an opinion on the issue, please feel free to comment. But again, please be respectful in the comments. I think respect is something that we really should be upholding on this channel. Um, so the first thing I just really want to cover and sort of address when looking at this issue is really just understanding the history of Anglicanism. So Anglicanism would be quite famous within the Christian world, just generally speaking as well, because it was the church founded by, I guess you could call him the tyrant, King Henry VIII. He is very famous for the wife killings. So he wasn't a great person, generally speaking. This is a fact that is accepted by the Anglican Church as well. So if you're gonna hate on the Anglican Church because of King Henry VIII, don't. King Henry VIII didn't do much, I guess. The only thing he really did was create a separate institution from Roman Catholicism. So I think we've covered this before many, many times on this channel, but Roman Catholicism is what you could see as the original church, the church that was centered in Rome. And then, of course, over history, you'd have various schisms, or schisms as in churches would leave the original church. So examples of that would be the Coptic schism, the Eastern Orthodox schism, that all of that would be considered as schisms. And so this was also a schism of sorts. A common misconception is that the Anglican Church formed as a result of the Protestant Reformation. That Protestant Reformation did have an effect, but really King Henry's intentions were very different to reforming the church. In fact, practice-wise, he didn't do much to reform the church. And so the reason why King Henry VIII really established the church in the first place was because the Pope wasn't letting him divorce his wives. Not divorce, annul his marriages, I should say. And so King Henry was like, you know what? The Pope's not going to listen to me. I'm going to create my own church. Um, and I'll make myself the head of it. Totally okay from, yeah. But yeah, King Henry did that, and he essentially created this institution. So he created a separate body where those who were actually interested in reforming the church could ultimately use that institution to their benefit. So after King Henry VIII's death, you obviously had Queen Mary. She was Catholic in her beliefs, and so she basically tried to destroy all the Protestant sentiment. She failed. Um, yeah, she didn't do really well in that. And then her half sister, Queen Elizabeth the First, she was Protestant, but she was trying to keep England together. She was trying to stop people from fighting each other. So Roman Catholics and Protestants. And it was really through her reign that the Anglican Church really began to flourish because the Queen Elizabeth I, her faith was very important to her. She was a Protestant through and through, very firm in her beliefs. And so during this time, you have people like Thomas Cranmer. He was a bishop from King Henry VIII's time, I believe, and he created this new book that we call the Book of Common Prayer. And this Book of Common Prayer essentially consists of a variety of different prayers and different worship services and rites. Now, what makes the Book of Common Prayer distinct to the Roman Catholic sort of way of worship is that at this time, Roman Catholic worship was in Latin. And what a lot of the reformers wanted to do, especially the Anglican Church, was make the church much more accessible. So, like, people would actually understand what the prayers were and what people were doing. Because obviously, learning Latin and things like that, that was something the aristocracy would do. So, they created this new prayer book that would be in English. To this day, it is in English. And the Book of Common Prayer essentially is a very detailed book. It has morning prayers, prayers for baptism, liturgical prayers. It's a very detailed book, generally speaking. So obviously, from what we sort of discussed before, the church began changing. It began establishing its own separate identity from the Roman Catholic Church, and the seat of the Anglican Church went to the church in Canterbury. So Canterbury Canterbury Cathedral, um, as many of you would be aware, is to this day a pilgrimage site in England. One of the reasons why it's a pilgrimage site is because Canterbury Cathedral is the site of the martyrdom of St. Thomas Becket. He died in defending the papacy, ironically, but St. Thomas Becket's pilgrimage site was very, very famous, and so the authority of the church in England went to the Archbishop of Canterbury after the king, obviously. And it was there that Anglicanism sort of got a stronghold and it really was concentrated in Canterbury. I think Anglicanism flourishes quite a bit in Canterbury. It's part of Canterbury's identity as well. And from there, missionaries went out across the world propagating the Anglican faith. I think Anglican missionaries really came along with the British sort of colonial affairs, and so everywhere colonials went, Anglicanism went with them. Um, so places in Africa, India, those places, Anglicanism flourishes as a result of colonialism. And so that's sort of the early history, I guess, that we should be covering. That's everything that's important. Today's issue is about the new Archbishop of Canterbury. And as many of you may have noticed, she is a woman. So she really has revolutionized, I guess, it's for lack of better terms, what it really means to be an archbishop. Because when you think of archbishops, you think of them as conservative Christian men. She's a woman who is pro LGBT and loves, well, not loves, but I take that back, not loves, but approves of same sex unions. That has sent waves across the Anglican Church. People are proud of her, people hate her. And so let's just sort of understand this idea of ordaining women. Because historically speaking, ordaining women hasn't been common. It's something that has started to happen, ooh, I believe in the early 90s. So the history of ordaining women in the Anglican Church began in 1992. Um, Actually here in Australia, which I was quite taken aback by when I saw that. In 1992, in Perth, in Australia, um, the first women started being ordained as priests. Now, I need to make this distinction very clear. There's a difference between a priest and a nun. A nun is a woman who is a monastic, but she does not participate in liturgical worship. So she will be there, she will be observing the liturgical rite, she can take communion, but she cannot be the priest who administers the Eucharist. That's not what a nun does. A nun is the typical, with the bonnet and the whole robes. That's what a nun is. A priest is someone who administers the Eucharist, and it is a role that has been traditionally held for men. A lot of people think it's because of sexism. I personally would disagree. I think there are religious reasons that have nothing to do with sexism as to why women haven't been ordained. But again, teach your own. And so essentially, what I was sort of just trying to say is that these women who are being ordained weren't nuns. Anglicans do have nuns, but there's not a lot of them. I think a lot of them have become Roman Catholic, as well. But yeah, so the ordination of women as priests, as people who can administer the Eucharist, was obviously a huge thing. It came as a result of a very tight vote from what we call the General Synod. The Synod is a meeting of bishops. This concept of the Synod exists in almost virtually all high church Christian groups. So Anglicans have synods, Presbyterians have synods, I believe, Methodists have synods, Catholics obviously have synods, Orthodox have synods as well. So the idea of a synod is quite universal. So at the vote of the from the General Synod at this meeting of bishops, the vote to allow women to be ordained was quite tight. Um, sorry, excuse me for a second. Um, the vote was. I apologize, I'm not feeling quite well today. But again, what I was trying to say is that the vote to allow women to be ordained was quite tight, and it the legacy of that tight vote still exists today. I think a lot of bishops are quite they disagree a lot on this topic. So let's just like go through the points for pro ordination of women and then against the ordination of women. So essentially, one of the reasons why women were believed, like, sorry, I should rephrase that. One of the reasons why people thought women should be ordained is this idea of equality in Christ. So people who believe in Christianity is they believe that, of course, everyone is equal in the eyes of Christ. And so supporters of the ordination of women believe that through the sacred rite of baptism, which is a common rite that everyone has to go through, men and women also equally share the priesthood of Christ. Okay, so not them being a nun for Christ, but a priesthood of Christ. So they can be ordained. They are eligible for being ordained. And a lot of them cite biblical examples. So arguments that are made cite biblical figures like Phoebe, who served as a deaconess. This is like I think Old Testament times. And you also have people like Priscilla and Junia who were called co-workers, co-workers, and also potentially an apostle by Paul. But again, this is very contested. Not everybody agrees with this. It's a very controversial thing. And Anglicans, supporting Anglicans in women's ordination use this as an example or evidence that women are in fact capable of holding leadership roles within the church. And a last sort of point that is made is this idea of reversing the cultural bias. And essentially it just means that the tradition of not ordaining women is, I guess, seen as people as a cultural bias, which um was influenced by past church leaders' judgment. So of course there were saints and whatnot who did not support the ordination of women. They're venerated, but people say that they were of course influenced by the culture and societal norms of that time, and therefore it's not a divine prohibition that women shouldn't be priests, but rather it was a societal thing. But the argument against the ordination of women, and this is the argument that I've really been surrounded with, generally speaking, because I do typically take my research from conservative groups. I try to be as like neutral as possible, obviously, but the argument that I've heard a lot against ordaining women is that in the Old Testament, the priesthood was reserved to men alone. So when Jesus found the New Testament priesthood, which began with the apostles, he chose men alone, right? When we look at the 12 apostles, all of them are men. And so a lot of sources believe that it's a pretty clear deliberate act, and it's taken as a binding practice by a lot of people who support the who support not ordaining women. This is an argument which is held by Catholics as well, Eastern Orthodox as well. But yes, the argument against ordaining women is quite extensive. I will put some resources in the description for you guys to read. I specifically recommend Catholic Answers. They're a very good source for understanding Catholicism and Catholic belief and Catholic stance on a lot of different issues. But yeah, let's just sort of analyze now that we've gone through the history and sort of understanding the ordination of women. Let's just sort of understand the effect of what this has had, this election has had, the election of a woman to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, I forgot to actually mention her name. Her name is Archbishop Sarah Mullally. I can't say her name. I'm sorry, but she was elected as the new Archbishop of Canterbury. And as soon as she got elected, the a lot of churches across the world which would consider themselves to be a part of the Anglican Communion left. So you have the Nigerian church, which actually holds one of the largest Christian populations. Actually, I should rephrase that. The Nigerian church holds, I think, one of the largest Anglican communities. So the Nigerian church left the church. They don't consider themselves to be in communion with Canterbury anymore. And it's been a huge blow to the Anglican Church. The Nigerian Church is left, and so really the only place where Anglicanism is quite popular, I guess, based off my research, is in England and then also in America. So, sort of outside the Western world, Anglicanism is sort of splitting apart. But yeah, the Nigerian church left the Anglican church, and a lot of, I guess, I went through this before. A lot of conservative Anglicans are really starting to question whether or not Anglicanism remains to be the true church, and whether or not, the succession of bishops, the holy, sacred succession of bishops, has been broken by the fact that a woman has been elected. Of course, this is, I guess, if I could summarize that argument, it's the break in apostolic succession, which is something a lot of people are concerned about, considering the fact that apostolic succession tends to be a determining factor for a true church. And since that has been broken with the election of a woman, of course, by some belief, it's really been a lot of people were really questioning the church and are trying to, and obviously are leaving, and a lot of stuff is happening as well. And a lot of people are Protestant apologists as well, mainline Protestant apologists, so Redeemed Zuma is quite a popular one, are really, of course, questioning, I guess, the legitimacy of these churches and highlighting the fact that these churches are moving towards a more liberal, in their words, anti-Christian beliefs. And so, yeah, I guess that's where we are. That's where we are with this issue. If you're going to ask me for my opinion, I personally do think it's a very, very extensive issue. It's something that requires a lot of discretion. I think like insulting each other and being a bit too, overreactive about this issue isn't going to help. But yeah, I mean, I'm not Christian, so like, I don't think my opinion is of any value here. But yeah, that's where we are with this whole issue of the new election of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Please share your thoughts in the comments in the description below. If you guys have anything else to share, and if anything else you want me to cover, please let me know. I am looking to start a new series on Islam very, very soon, so please look forward to that. Also, I really want you guys to watch my full videos. I know I can't control whether or not you guys watch my full videos or not, but please do so. I do put a lot of effort into it, so please do try to bear with me. If it gets really boring, turn it off. Okay, I totally understand. But yeah, thank you y'all for your support. Please remember to subscribe. I know, like, I got almost 900 views on a video, and I still have like 30 something subscribers. So like, y'all need to lock in. and subscribe and hit that like button. And yeah, if you guys have anything else to share about life, generally speaking, please do so. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.